Hello, folks. My name is DC Rockwell, and this is your co-host, Elio Greco. Welcome to Code and Chaos, a pseudo-random conversation that starts with tech and ends where it ends, an hour or two later. Tonight's conversation is brought to you by our subscribers and by egx.org. Elio, we're starting over. Again. But for good reason. And I think that the folks who have been watching the show lately will remember us asking for some feedback, and we got some good feedback. So thank you very much to Knifin and to Angry Knees and to others outside of the internet for giving us some great feedback on different things we can do better as a show. Tonight, I would like to announce that we're rebooting a little bit the direction of Fault Tolerant and of Code and Chaos. It's not going to be very, very different. It's just that we've noticed that our episodes and our topics have been going in a lot of different directions, and we've also noticed that we've been like doubling up on a lot of the information, different kinds of topics, and we were trying to come up with a strategy on how we could address that. How can we tie this up a little better? And so we decided to start with a mission, a vision, mission, and value statement for the company. This would allow us to align all of our show ideas, all of our episode ideas, all of the themes, everything from the thumbnails and everything on up to accomplishing our mission. And since we haven't done this before I'm not sure if, Elio, why don't you tell me, have you ever done anything like this in another company of yours?
Yeah, I mean, we generally, most of the startups I've done, we do maybe something not as elaborate as the kind of the notes we put together before the show, but you want to make sure everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction, so as it were, because there's this myth of productivity that as long as you're super busy and you're working as hard as you possibly can, good things will happen. And that's just not true. It's kind of like Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule. It's not actually true. Just because you put in 10,000 hours doesn't make you an expert. You have to put in good, useful hours, and you might get good faster. It might take longer, but it's got to be just not work for work's sake. It's got to have a goal. There's got to be a purpose. And that's what I've seen. There's actually a company I do a little advisory work, and we were talking about them today, and they're definitely busy. They're definitely always putting in 110%, but they're kind of going in circles because they're not looking at what is successful, what is costing us money, what is making us money, what should we be doing more of versus less of. And so just because you're busy doesn't mean you're going to succeed. Like, you have to be smart about being busy. Smart work is always better than just work for work's sake. And I think that, some of that's leftovers from the industrial age, where if you're on an assembly line and you don't really have to think about anything, you got to show up on time. You got to put in everything because the whole line grinds to a halt if you don't have everyone at the line. But that's not where we are as a species globally anymore. We're moving away to stuff that requires more knowledge work, where it's a lot more thinking and strategy and not just dumbly doing the same thing. We got automation for that. That's taking over every aspect of society. So it's really about getting smart. So we'll see. We'll see if we can realign, and I'll take some of the super technical stuff and the research I've been doing. I've had some other venues to kind of share the ultra technical stuff. And I'm realizing that CactusCon, I think, is over now. They might be doing after party stuff. I missed today. But CactusCon's Arizona's little version of DEF CON, which is the big security conference. And like, there are people just as impressive. There are people that show up at both events. So I've been enjoying CactusCon for many years now. They do a phenomenal job getting top-notch people in. And you can go to their website. They have everything online. They streamed it on YouTube, and it's already available. You won't be able to do the live discussion, obviously, but lots of good stuff. But their stuff is super, super, super technical. And so, we're kind of looking at that saying, we're not intending this to be a super hyper technical show. The talks I'll be giving at universities, the talks I'll be giving at special groups that is their focus, is highly, highly technical security research and software development and research. That's the venue for those. So we'll back off a little bit and focus more on the why and not so much the minutia of the how.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd like to first start with some of the feedback that we got back. And so I guess feedback already, you get that back. That's why it's called feedback. But anyway, um, Angry Knees had sent in some very thoughtful feedback to us that was that hit me in a spot where I was already working on it. And it was that, you know, a lot of my family members and some of my friends, they listened to the show and they had the feedback of, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but you know, it's cool to listen to you. And I'm like, and I realized, you know, to me, that was missing the mark of what it was that I want to do with Fault Tolerant and what I want to do with Code and Chaos specifically, which was to make these complicated issues accessible, to, you know, take things like strong digital identity, encryption, things like blockchain and the impact of cryptocurrency on society, and bring it down to a level where we're talking about why we should care about this stuff. Why should I care about the impacts of these kinds of technologies on myself and my family and everyone else? And we seem to start going in that direction a little bit, but we ended up doing a lot of episodes which were more like technical deep dives on each of them, which it was talking a little less about why someone should be interested in this. And we were talking a little bit more about how does it work. And there are so many great resources out there on how things work. So many great, I really love animation. For some reason, that really works for me when it comes to a learning method. And so, you know, and there's other folks who, you know, they like to read stuff. There's folks who like to have discussions about it. And all we were doing is one single type of explaining that. You know, we were sort of doing the tech talk version of that. And while that's awesome, there were a lot of other folks who I think, you know, they might get some of this stuff faster if we just showed them one of the animations that are already available out there. So it's not to take away from what we were doing, because I loved it. I really enjoyed basically what this show has been so far is Elio and I recording our phone calls. This is the stuff that we discuss on the phone calls. A little bit less heated. He and I get real, like, we try to convince each other of our position, which is not a good thing to do with general, you know, with people that you know generally. But I think he and I have turned it into sort of a sport. So it's a personal sport between he and I. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
We have discussed building a website to allow other people to see how we operate in that area. And then we found one that kind of is that. I forget the name right now. But it's not quite. Like, it kind of is that, but you can't really export the information if you put in a lot of work. It's kind of trapped in their website, and it's like, it makes it a lot less compelling. But yeah, no, I have a lot of people I know that I have that just wildly different viewpoints. And I actually enjoy anyone who can have a useful discussion, because there's a big difference between arguing to win and arguing to learn.
Right.
And anyone of almost any background, if you want to have a discussion to learn, I am almost always down for at least an hour, if not more. And I've had some that go in person or on phone for, 6 hours or more. It's kind of insane. But I love getting new knowledge and new viewpoints. And I have people, oh, wow, how do you know so much? Because I do a ton of research. I try to find people that think very differently than me, and then I try to listen to what they're saying. And I'm always finding stuff where I still miss things. And I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, wow, I missed that. Like, that's a really interesting point. That's actually super important. How did I miss that last time? But that's not what you see on the internet. You see a lot of stuff that is purely arguing to win, and no one wins. When you argue to win, you just come off like an asshole, and the people you're arguing against, they don't learn anything. They just dig in deeper. And it's a pernicious habit that the internet has it's gamified discussion, which is not good. that's a really
Right.
bad place to gamify. And yeah, it would be neat to like, that's one thing we should do a whole show on sometime, is just structure of argument. If you don't know anything about what someone's saying, there's a lot of times where you can call bullshit on certain, like, you just look at how someone's arguing, and there are certain, not just logical fallacies, but there are certain techniques and tactics in an argument where you're like, why are they dodging that question? Why are they redirecting to this other issue? That's not the question that was asked. They haven't addressed that point. And there's all kinds of more subtle things where if you're really paying attention to just the structure of the discussion, a lot of times you can tell who knows what they're talking about and who's completely full of it just by analyzing the overall structure of the discourse. And then the really useful thing is if you can apply that to yourself, because we all fall into some of those more toxic modes of discussion. And if you can identify that, stop it, and then go to something more useful, that's when you get to like start learning stuff and actually getting smart. But until you can do that, it's a waste of everyone's time. If you enjoy sparring, then whatever, but you're not getting any smarter just arguing to win.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something I've always enjoyed about our arguments, is that we truly are arguing it's more like I'm demanding that you explain yourself more. And I'm going, hey, Leo, I don't get why you would be into this in that way. And then you explain it. And I got to admit, he's definitely the winner in terms of overall points, because he's definitely got me to come over to his understanding more often than I've done it. So kudos to you for the persistence in taking on those battles. But
I'm
anyway,
not keeping score. So.
No, I haven't kept score, but I got to say that, if there was a scoreboard, you're winning. So anyway, tonight's, topic is really just about defining our identity and what it is that we want to do with these shows. What kind of topics do we want to talk about, and to kind of address some of the criticism, positive criticism of the show so far. So this way, the shows going forward are going to be more accessible. They're going to be a little less arcane. They're going to be, cool episodes about technology, but as it relates to real world implications, how it fits into your life. And so this brings me to my first major point here, which is that what I really want out of these shows is to equip people with the vocabulary, or how should I put it? I want to equip people with the right kinds of questions and topics and things that they can bring up at the dinner table and explain things to the rest of their family. I want it to be something that is viral in nature, where, I can tell you something cool about maybe blockchain, and you'll be like, hey, Dad, I heard this cool thing about blockchain. Did you know this?
Or maybe you can fight bad information. I won't call it misinformation, but there's a video I haven't had the displeasure of watching saying that blockchain is like saving the world and saving us from economic tyranny, which is hilarious, because on the same page I found that link, there's a link and a guy in India talking about how the government is, basically forcing him to get rid of all his Bitcoin, and it doesn't do anything against tyranny.
All right.
So,
I knew saying say something cool about Bitcoin was going to trigger you.
I have been requested by multiple parties to do a show that is far more antagonistic against blockchain, by a university, no less, among other parties that would like me to give the same talk. So I will probably keep doing that. But yeah, like hopefully we can teach you good things and teach you to stay away from dangerous things.
Yeah, and let's rephrase it. I probably am not going to make a show about the cool things about blockchain, because that would be a very short show.
One, two bullet points tops.
There's some cool things, like
not much, but yeah.
But
there's some cool side effects. We could do the side effects, like what's the good stuff that's come out of blockchain research that has nothing to do with blockchain.
Sure, but
anyway, there is some of that.
The point, though, is that I would like to say maybe speak about some of the dangers of blockchain. And I would like to say it in such a way that then the next time our audience member has somebody in their life say, oh man, blockchain's just the greatest thing ever, that they have these very simple points that we've made in the episode to have that discussion with the other person. And then maybe that person goes back out and talks to their friends about that, and it creates a discussion. And hopefully that discussion is viral in nature, where it has the maximum reach to as many people as possible. Because our audience used to be pretty big, but since going off the air for about 3 years, it's shrunk considerably. And I'm noticing that, I'm having a hard time personally reconciling what it is that I want to do with the show with the size of the audience and how long it would take for us to build up an audience where we're just only talking directly to them. I want to talk to them and through them to the rest of the folks that they know, and give them cool things to talk about at the dinner table, cool things to talk about with their friends, with their coworkers. That is really what I would love to accomplish. So that said, I guess that is sort of the vision of Code and Chaos, right? And today we'd like to bring up the big screen here and show you something that we are going to work on interactively here with all of your input. So this is your chance to be part of defining the company DNA for Fault Tolerant, which is going to trickle down into all of the shows. We want to today establish our vision. We want to establish our values. We were talking about the show and series, but we decided to make that for another day. So I'll just take that out for right now. But we just want to focus on the vision, the mission statement, and our values statement. Why? Because we want to make sure that the content we're producing is in line with these three things, and that these three things can guide us. So we're talking to that ideal audience member out there, the one that wants to hear this stuff, but also wants to speak about what they see on this show with other people. So, vision and the difference between a vision and a mission statement. Do you want to talk about that real quick? Because we were doing some research before the show, and it turns out that there's I did not know there was such a distinctive difference between the vision and the mission statement, but it makes sense to me.
I'll let you cover that, but I'll play the pessimist there. And we're going through, and we have a site idea. If anyone wants to build this, go for it. If I actually end up with spare time someday, we'll build it. But we're reading through a lot of these example vision and mission statements from these large companies, and we're not going to name them so their lawyers don't come after us. But it's just hilarious how far they are from reality. It's almost like when you call the big guy tiny, like that kind of thing. And you're like, oh, that's your statement, huh? Cool. Because you're doing the exact opposite of that. And just basically pick any major company. It's not hard, but I'd love to have a site that just aggregates all of their vision and mission statements in one place. And then you can vote on, is this company actually holding true to what they're saying?
Yeah, we really wanted to list off some of the other visions and mission statements of other companies that we found online. But Elio says that I should probably get legal consultation before I do that. And well, he convinced me.
we can list them, but we have to just leave it at that, because I've already been fraudulently sued by a company that, they would have lost, and eventually they backed off because they realized we were going to win the countersuit and get a whole bunch of money from them. But it cost a whole lot of money to get to that point of not, so that's the thing about our legal system. Like, you don't have to win to win. If you're flush with cash, you can sue anyone for any reason. And, generally, even if you abuse that privilege and you just sue and sue and sue and sue, and you lose every single time, no one comes after you and is like, hey, you're abusing the legal system, you need to go to prison. Like, you just get to keep playing that game. And as long as you have enough money in the bank, you can use that to just beat down all your opponents and there's nothing they can do about it if they don't have a similar amount of money. So
yeah, I mean, I do live in a state that has SLAPP laws, but I'm not a lawyer. I do not know if that really applies to this kind of stuff. I don't know if it applies to defamation cases. So, I'm going to leave my opinion of these different mission statements out of it. But I will actually let's just talk about some of them. So, for example, the Disney Corporation, their vision is to make people happy. And what was it? Microsoft, their vision is to let's skip it.
I'll do Facebook. They want to make the world more open and connected.
There we go.
Leave it at that.
Yeah.
Feel free to search the headlines.
So I don't know. I feel like this is going the wrong direction now already. Let's leave it. Let's leave everybody else's visions alone. Let's talk about ours. So, part of what I'd like to articulate, before we talk about the vision, let's talk about the difference between a mission statement and the vision. I have it right here. The vision is what we hope to accomplish in the future, and the mission statement says what we will do now to achieve that vision, to achieve our vision. So, the reason why I wanted to bring up these examples of other companies' visions is because they sound. They just sound very generic. They sound very how do you put it without getting sued? They're not the kind of vision statement that I respond well to.
I'm gonna quote an animated thing that I rather like. It's popular but not super popular. Let's see if anyone can name it. But to quote one of their episodes, reek of corporate shame.
That your fan says it's how to hide your intentions 101. That's fantastic.
I just like they reek of corporate shame. If you know what that's from, I'm impressed. It's not super obscure, but it's not that popular yet.
So if we were going to say our vision, let me start with some of the things. We're going to whittle this down, but let's just start with a couple of the things that we want to accomplish in the future. So I was impacted very strongly in my life by a report that was brought out by the World Economic Forum. And they said that there was going to be 1 billion people by 2030 who are going to be unemployable due to skill displacement, meaning that their jobs will become either automated or the demand for those kinds of services are going to go away in favor for others. And so I felt bad about this because a lot of the professions that were listed as high risk were professions that most of my friends and family are part of.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea that by 2030 they would be unemployable and they would be, severely financially challenged. Maybe not just financially, but they'll be challenged in their lives and struggle. So I thought through different ways that I could maybe help with this problem. And one of them was that with the number of people from Automate All the Things that asked us all the time, how do I get my start in coding? How do I get into tech? That seemed, and I liked a lot of our answers. I think we provided some good insight into how to get started because it was based on our own experience. We got to basically just say what we did. And we've both had some great careers in tech. And I do not believe that. I mean, I don't know. Ailio's pretty sharp, but I'm a normal dude. I'm not really like that academic type of clever person. I had to grind in order to learn this stuff, and I had to build it up a little bit at a time. And I had some advantages in that I had some I had some parents that were into some technical things, and they were able to, help me out with a computer and stuff early on. But by 2030, I think that most people will have access to the tools that they'll need in order to get into programming or another maybe graphic design, or maybe into creating templates for different kinds of do-it-yourself website stuff. There's a whole slew of different kinds of professions. So how can we help out with that? And so part of the vision here for me is to help people develop a new technical.
I was going to say, just deal with the oncoming age of automation and augmentation.
I guess you're right. I guess this is sort of like this is sort of a mission statement thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but that encompasses lots of stuff. It's not just gaining new skills. Like, people talk about, the Iron Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Industrial Age, all this, all the various ages of humanity. And I think what most people mess up when they're thinking about that is there's a difference. There's two kinds of jump from age to age. There's one that's a jump that's just like a bigger, faster version of the previous one. And then there's some jumps that are completely different, like shifts in how everything operates. And so you look at like pre-agricultural to agricultural, and again, moving to Bronze Age to Bronze Age. So like pre-Bronze Age to Bronze Age was really big. Now you have tools that are metal that suddenly are way more useful, and you can do new things that make tools that were much harder to make out of things that are like wood and stone are just a lot harder to work with in some areas than metal. And the jump though from like Bronze Age to Iron Age, you have better metal, but it's just metal again. And so it's not that much different. It's just better, faster, right? And so what people screw up, because I remember going to museums like in Washington, D.C., and they had this whole big, history of computing on the ENIAC and all the other, early computers. And they pitched, a lot of people see the jump from the industrial age, which was, again, one of those massive shifts like, oh, wow, we never had all these machines. We never really had factories that could do stuff at scale at huge speed. And now we do. And that was a big jump in kind. But then the jump from the industrial age to the information age, people think is like some wow, magical, incredible thing. But it's not. It was just speeding things up. We had the Sears catalog, and then now we have Amazon. It's basically the same thing. It's just bigger, faster version with computers. We had mail. Now we have email. Again, bigger, faster thing that's global. It's not really that much different in any meaningful way than mail. Other than the amount of spam, but that's a separate story. So the jump from the current age, the information age, which we're actually, I would say, kind of leaving now, we're already, stepping into the age of automation and augmentation. That's another one of those massive jumps where a lot of stuff changes drastically. It's not like our transition from the, industrial to the information age. This one's going to look a lot different. All the stuff, before we could automate dumb things, and that really helped. The amount of stuff we could build, the amount of work we could get done as humans went way up. But this time we can automate smart things that have variation. And I gave a whole bunch of talks, and I used to use a picture of this pick and pack robot where you can just have stuff strewn on a conveyor belt now. And modern computer vision systems can, whatever angle it's at, if it's like bell peppers that are weird organic shapes, they have pick and pack robots that can reliably grab one of each color, and then pack them. And if you look at the old robotics, everything had to be perfectly aligned, like within less than an inch tolerance to be picked up properly. And now it's gotten to the point where I don't use the pick and pack robot anymore. They have a bell pepper harvesting robot. They have a strawberry harvesting robot. They have tomato harvesting robots. Like, those are super, super difficult. I forget right now, there's a name, laws of robotics. There's a name for this law where stuff that we consider super difficult, like calculus, is trivial for a computer. You don't need a robot. Just computers have done calculus for a long time. It's easy. Computers are great at, just raw computation. Whereas things that are trivial for a young child, like a 5-year-old, learning how to, pick up arbitrary objects and, just do something with them, those are actually super, super, super difficult for robotics. And they take a ton of technology, a ton of training. And so there's this weird inverse relationship. The stuff that's really hard for us is trivially easy for the machines. And the stuff that's really easy for us has always been super hard to do with machines. But that's finally starting to kind of break down. We finally have enough machine learning and robotics and all this where it's not that hard anymore. It's still hard, it's still expensive. But in 20 years, a lot of the mundane tasks will be at a point where you just don't need a human. And that's going to have massive, massive implications for the nature of work And especially right now, and I can only speak to the US, but I think there's plenty of other countries that fall into this. Right now, you don't just get to live, right? If you don't have a job, you don't get money. If you don't have money, you don't have a place to sleep out of the elements. You don't have food reliably. You don't have any kind of medical care. Even if you have a job, you might not have decent medical care with how messed up our system is now. So when you don't need people, and that's how you get money, is by needing, a company needs to employ you. If companies don't need to employ you anymore, that's a big problem. And anyway, I'm not going to go into the details. There's a story by Marshall Brain called Manna, Manna. And I really think he wrote that, a decade or two ago at least. It's freely available to read online. Read the first 2/3. Last third, not big on that. But the first 2/3 of Manna, if you're alive today, like, it's already happening. Read that book, because he talks about like turning people basically into the hands of the robot. We're actually a little past what he talks about in the book of like making people the hands of the robot, and how that, that's how you deal with the hard parts of what's hard for a robot to do. You just have a computer just tell a lot of cheap people what to do, which is Amazon's well into, and we're moving past that toward fuller automation at this point. And anyway, it's a great book. I strongly recommend people read it. If there's a reason I'm fixating on it, like, seriously, go read that. Read that, and read the dystopian novels. Read Orwell, Animal Farm, 1984, Fahrenheit 451. Like, as the bumper sticker goes, these were not supposed to be blueprints. These were supposed to be warnings. Whoops.
Okay, so the Aleo Book Club has officially started, folks. I do agree with you.
If you're alive today, you better understand what's coming.
You were the one who introduced me to Manna, and I think it's fantastic. It is a really important story to know, because it is a very plausible future. So I really liked a lot of what you were saying. I really liked a very small comment from That Your Fan, where he said, plumbing? Yes, actually, good point. Because I guess it's not about code. I'm a software engineer, so when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but it's not really about code. Code's just one part of it. I rewrote the vision up here to say, helping people adapt their skills to the age of technology. Plumbers will. They're in the very near future. I can imagine plumbers using AR systems in order to see where the problem is and to visualize it to their customers and things like that. And once a customer has a plumber come over that can show them on a tablet exactly where the problem is in their house and what they're going to do and how much it'll cost and all that stuff, why would they want to go with any other kind of plumber,
I wish I had the video pulled up to show you. I don't know if I have it quickly available. I'm still working on indexing all my stuff, but there was a really cool AR demo for masonry. And normally the goal of masonry is to have nice straight lines. But if you have augmented reality, and this is just using like Xbox Connect type stuff, you don't even need like super fancy hardware. They had these really smooth, undulating, where each brick is off by like a degree or half a degree to make this wave pattern that is just mind-blowing and would be extremely difficult to do by hand. It would take some of the most skilled masons to pull it off. And you don't need any special skill. You're looking, and the AR system is showing you exactly where the brick is supposed to be. And as you're placing the brick, once you get it into the right tolerance, the little virtual brick goes from like red to green or whatever it was. And you're like, okay, that one's good. Next brick. Yep. And you just literally do what the system is telling you. And you end up with this amazing, this computationally created masonry project that's really almost impossible to do any other way.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect example, because if a mason can put on an AR system and be able to do that kind of work for cheap versus having to hire a master mason that's going to know how to do this, by eyesight, the cost is going to be vastly different between those two.
Yeah.
And so and don't get me wrong, master masons, I think that there's something for them too. They just need to adapt those skills to the age of technology in order to do maybe some more advanced stuff that is AR assisted, that is even, more interesting than the stuff that the journeyman can do or so.
I think they would be the ones probably driving the innovation in that field. Like they already know what can be done, and you give them a brand new tool like this. It's like, what if Leonardo da Vinci had a carbon fiber, right? Like, holy crap, right? He did amazing stuff with what he had, and now you give them a tool that powerful, and that's when you get some incredible innovation. But the problem is, while you're enabling the best of the best to move at a brand like a whole new speed and take it to a whole nother level, you're also kind of getting rid of the jobs or removing the need. Like there's a point of skilled labor, and when you can replace skilled labor with just labor, that's not really good. In today's society, that means you can pay them next to nothing, like slave wages, which a lot of companies right now, like you look at the growth in global productivity, it's gone way up over the last 2 decades. Salaries, not a whole lot of movement. Pretty flat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like that idea. I like the idea of, the economy seems to be moving toward, folks who want to be a mason. They get this AR system, and they download these patterns to be able to do these crazy, awesome walls with bricks, for example. Well, those patterns have to be designed somehow, and master masons would have then a great role to play there. That's a great example.
I don't want to pull a Kevin Kelly here and pretend it's all sunny, because on the flip side of that, you look at Uber and these models of the gig economy, which I'm glad they met. Does anyone else remember they used to call this the sharing economy? And that really pissed me off, because it's not about sharing. It's about risk externalization. And that doesn't roll off the tongue like the gig economy, but really maybe a lot of these jobs, right? All the risk is externalized from the company to the people who are trying to drive. And if something happens, your car breaks. We already covered this on a previous show, but your car breaks, they don't care. They got plenty of other people lined up. It's not their problem. Sure. You're on the hook for getting your car fixed. So we got to be really careful, because with these new capabilities that are positive come along some other consequences that are negative, and that has to be balanced.
I'm not even thinking gig economy. I was just thinking about like markets, like, WordPress has a theme market, and anybody can come on there and they can create some super awesome theme that really impresses people and start selling it directly to people, and I think WordPress might take us a little bit for the market, but that's okay. That's fair game. They could also, there's also plenty of people who don't sell it through the WordPress market, sell it directly themselves, and people just copy and paste the HTML and stuff into WordPress, and they can do it that way.
There's issues there too, though, with people selling lower quality products and markets making it harder to find someone. Anyway,
another day.
When you said markets, I initially thought you were talking about stonks, and I think everyone should start calling the stock market the stonk market to make fun of it, because it's totally detached from reality. Wow. And I've talked with a few economists. Anyway, GameStop's the fun one. I'd love to do a show on that.
Yeah, I want to talk about GameStop another time, but I get you. There's challenges in markets, and I'm definitely not trying to solve the world's problems. I'm trying to show, say, the plumber or the mason or the truck driver or anybody else who's in a high risk for skill displacement industry. I want to show them how to get started in adapting their skills to whatever the reality is for how we have to get a paycheck these days, or those days in the future. Because there might be problems with markets, but you know what? If that's the only way to make money as a mason in the future, well, you're just going to have to learn how to adapt. Or, another form of adaptation will be adapting to a whole new skill. You may find that, masonry is just not for you if that's what you have to do, and you may want to go and do something else. But all of these industries, all of them are going to be significantly changed. The types of skills needed to be a mason in the past and the types of skills needed to be a mason in the future are going to be, there's going to be some overlap, but I think that there's going to be significant differences and major challenges for folks who aren't as acclimated to technology as others.
Yeah. Now, I do want to say, I think for what we're planning for the show, I think that's probably best to stick with that. However, one thing that just personally that I've become more annoyed by, there's certain problems that can be solved at the individual level, and there's certain problems that require systemic change. And there's been some interesting research on kind of climate change and several other issues, plastic pollution, all this, where there have been campaigns that have been successful. Oh, you should replace all your toilets with low flow toilets. And you actually look into, well, wait a minute, what is the water usage breakdown in like a metro area like Phoenix, Arizona, which is good size, but fifth largest in the nation? So wait a minute, how much of our water actually goes to people, like just individuals versus businesses versus farming? And the terrible news is like 20% of the water goes to the residents of Phoenix. The other 80% goes to industrial and agriculture. So assuming we all magically just stopped using water totally, 20% reduction. Whereas these other fields, if they had a modest reduction, it's more than we could ever practically hope to do. So I don't know, like I agree with you that it's good to give people some tools to help themselves out. But I think this narrative that the self-made man and this idea that you could solve your own problems, there are problems that you cannot solve by yourself. There are problems that have to be solved at global scale. And I want to make sure we don't distract from that, because I think that's a really dangerous thing that's been happening for decades now.
So I don't want to be opinionated about what people want to do with their career. If they want to go into being an automation engineer at a Nestle plant, I'm not going to be opinionated about what they are doing. I presume that that person knows more about their life and what it is that they need to do for their family than I will ever know. And so all I want to do is I want to provide a platform where folks can come here and they can hear something about maybe their skill. Maybe we could get it more specific. We could talk about, water management or a water management engineer or something like that, and talk about, what are the different kinds of technology coming to their industry. And I'd like to talk about it just so this way, folks who will be faced in the future with having to choose what they are going to do in order to feed their families, they're educated enough to make a well-informed decision for themselves based upon what they know. Maybe they want to stay in water management. Maybe they say, you know what, based upon the challenges and the waste of how water is going right now, then maybe I don't want to be in this industry anymore. But I am not going to take a position that looks down on anybody's industry. I've just noticed that there's, if you ask a person that is working in a particular job that you don't understand why they would ever work in it, that you appall what it is that they do, they usually have some good answers for why it is that they want to do it, that come down to either, hey, this is just what I want to do, and you know what, we all have to choose how to live our best life. And some people say, I'm making compromises, and it's usually very reasonable. There are, a couple of things people do that directly hurt people, and maybe we could find examples of that. And
online advertising.
Well, even that, there's just plenty of people who I don't want to go into it, but the point is that
I don't want to be giving people individual advice when what they need to be doing. There's some problems that go bug the hell out of your state representative. Go
I don't know
careful where you spend your dollars with what companies, because there are certain trends that have to be solved at a systemic level. They cannot be solved individually.
Okay. How does that tie into the vision of Fault Tolerant?
The stuff that we're talking about is we want to give people the knowledge that they can use to hopefully survive this transition, or ideally thrive in this transition from the information age to the age of automation and augmentation. And some of that will be reskilling. Some of that will be teaching them how to get a job in coding. But like you said, coding is not for everyone. Some people, for various reasons, just may not make the transition or may not want to make the transition. And this idea that's getting pushed, everyone should learn how to code. No, they shouldn't. It actually kind of sucks. I mean, there's fun parts of it. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy writing beautiful code, but there's also a lot of crappy parts about a career in coding. It's not for everyone, and we shouldn't have to have everyone coding. There should be lots of other stuff you can do and still make a living. And so I don't want to just get people stuck on one path that there's no well, this is how you're going to do it. I want to maybe provide one or ideally several different options that hopefully stuff that we're knowledgeable enough to speak on, or we can have guests who are. But yeah, I don't want to lie to people. I don't want to be like, oh, it's fine. You just need to learn how to sling some code and learn some Python, which is super popular. No, it's not. That's not going to do it, because at some point coding will be automated too. That is still very early research, but full program synthesis is not unheard of. It's just not scalable. And at that point, the coding's going away too. So there are bigger conversations that people need to at least be aware of what's on the horizon in the next 50 years.
I guess you're right, but I disagree in one way. I'm not trying to be the 50-year solution. I'm trying to be the 10-year solution. And from there, I presume there are going to be young, talented content producers that are going to run circles around me in terms of their efficacy of being able to do this same vision, of achieving this same vision.
Okay. Even content production, I think, is under threat, but go on.
That's fine. But the point is that something in the future is going to make obsolete whatever we are doing here. And I don't know if it's going to be within 10 or 20 years, but I don't think we're going to be lasting with this plan for 50. And so for me, it's that 2030 is the year that I have my eye on. The World Economic Forum said that 1 billion people are going to be skill displaced by 2030. Mm-hmm. That is the year that I'm hoping that this vision can be realized by.
The reason I say 50 year is because I think there's some interesting trends in cybersecurity, but really everywhere, that I think the trends we think are 50 to 100 year will actually happen within 10 to 20 in some cases.
Then maybe so, but I'm not trying to create a resilient system here that is going to stand the test of time. I don't think part of the vision here is to stand the test of time with what we're doing. I think we are literally just a stop stopgap to the problem. We're trying to help people in the next 9 years, trying to help them to adjust to something which is going to affect them by then. And along the way, in those next 9 years, doing our very best to try and adapt along with them and make it more effective.
I don't know. I feel like the world is going to be a lot like climbing a scree slope, which scree, for anyone who's not familiar, is just a whole bunch of crumbled little rock. It's fun, but it's challenging because unlike climbing a normal mountain, it slides under you. And no matter whether you're going up, where you're taking every step you take, you lose at least a half step sliding back down, or coming down, where you're basically riding a small avalanche, which is super fun but challenging. We're in a time of progress that is so rapid technologically and is changing some of the dynamics of the system under us that it's like climbing scree. Like there's never going to be this stable equilibrium, this idea that we had where things used to be constant for hundreds of years and it was comfortable and you could, set up a good life and plan it out decades ahead of time and just do this thing and have a good life being a certain, I'm a master mason, I'm a master, painter, whatever. You could really just revel in a 30 to 50 year career becoming the best of the thing. I don't know. I hope that still stays. I think mastery is beautiful. I think we shouldn't give that up. But I think there's a lot of forces that are pushing the world right now away from careers of mastery toward just interchangeableness, which is really, anyway, that's a separate discussion. But I think that's the age we live in.
Okay. But I would say that, I'm not really an optimist. And that's a very cynical thing to say, Elio. He was called out for being a cynic earlier by somebody else. Out.
That one dude is the only one who had that opinion. But I do want to respond to that. You're a fan, because yes, I have an answer. He says this is kind of off topic. We're kind of squirreling.
Just answer that one in chat.
He says they figured out who's liable for crashing, self-driving car crashes. Yes, they figured it out. It's you.
Yeah,
Musk is on record saying that it's you. If you use his self-driving tech and it crashes, that's your fault. Yes, the terms of service
so
you never actually read makes you liable.
So you're going with you're going with the cynical point of view, and you're warning me don't go with the optimist point of view. Can we meet in the middle and say, how about we go with a pragmatist point of view?
Pragmatist or realist. Let's examine the whole thing, because that's what I find lacking in a lot of their discussions is people they choose one side or the other. They're either just crapping on an idea that they don't like or that threatens their current business or current whatever it is that they're attached to, or they're fully bought in and they love this idea and at all costs, oh, this is the greatest. Like I was talking to you earlier about the...
Yeah. I was just going to say, the truth is that I don't even want to go there. I don't want to discuss the broader problems in the context of demoralizing people, because I do think that part of helping others adapt their skills to the age of automation involves giving them reasonable cause for they need their morale, and demoralizing people is just going to lead to more problems.
I disagree. I think there's some science. So look at the pandemic. There was some interesting research saying, look, we should just own up at the beginning and say a lot of people are going to die. However we handle this, even if we handle this well, it's going to go badly.
I get it.
The problem is I'm
not trying to solve that.
When you pretend that's not going to happen, and then people get taken by surprise, it actually puts them in worse place psychologically, and they're unprepared for it.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say is somebody else, maybe you, can demoralize them and tell them that they're all going to die. That's fine. What I'm trying to focus on, and what I want a laser focus on, is what can we do pragmatically right now to try and help somebody out there? How can we while the system's crumbling? If that's what you believe it's all crumbling around us, then while it's crumbling, how can we carve out an existence? How can we carve out a path for somebody to be able to feed their families for as long as possible?
I don't know if I'd use the word crumbling. I think it could. I think that's definitely a possible outcome. I think it's shifting rapidly, and that's the problem, is you don't know where to step. And so by giving people that here's where it's going to go, it's kind of like the perfect analogy is, I've hiked Havasupai Falls down to the Grand Canyon a whole bunch of times. It's got these beautiful mineral rings. And if you go down below Mooney Falls, we hiked down and the water was crystal clear and it was beautiful. And crossing these deeper sections of the stream, which it's not a huge river or anything, but there's some sections that are, pretty fast flowing water that's over chest deep. Like you're not going to be able to move through that easily. And all you do is you find the mineral rings and you just walk across water that's like 6 inches deep and you just hop over the little gap in between. It's not a big deal. And then we got caught in a flash flood. And all this, and you couldn't see on the way back. And the stuff that was so easy and so trivial to come down was so sketchy going back up when there was way more water and you couldn't see where your foot was going. You couldn't see what you were going to step on because we couldn't remember. We're like, wait, where was the ring that we crossed? I don't want to have to swim across like 8 foot of fast moving water and end up in the Colorado. So I think that's what we're trying to do. Like anytime people are moving into the unknown, whatever kind of adventure expedition, if you can give them a heads up and say, look, here's where you should step. Here's what worked for us. You're giving them the tools.
That's the thing though. We're heading into the unknown and we're pretending to be guides. If you look at 10 years ago, the only prediction that I think that actually came true from 10 years ago of you talking to me is that there would still be things to complain about. You definitely nailed that one, but in terms of what you thought was going to be adopted by now, it didn't happen. And
I don't know. I don't think optimism is a successful strategy either.
I don't believe optimism is either. I think it's more along the lines of just saying, this is how it is. Let's accept it for how it is in this context. If you want to try to solve those bigger problems, by all means, have conversations about that. Find out how you can maybe contribute to that. But for our purpose, we want to accept things exactly as they are. If there's a market on Facebook that is taking 40% of people's stuff, but that's the only way to make money, we're going to show people how to get into that. We're going to show people how to adapt their skills so this way they can get some money, because the alternative of them having no money, the alternative of them having to, suffer is what I'm trying to avoid. So I want something that is going to be immediately useful to somebody, not something they have to wait, not something they have to petition a politician for, something that they can do right now, today, that has a reasonable path toward having a little more career security. That's what I want.
I think that's not a bad goal. My concern is you can hurt by helping. It's like if someone is, desperately thirsty and you give them tainted water, right? Like, okay, they're better off now if there's Giardia in the water.
They get to choose. I am not going to tell them this is the thing that I think you should do. They're going to say, I want to learn this. I want to learn this. And I'm going to say, okay, well, if that's what you'd like to do, here's how we do it. Are you aware of all of what you're getting into? Okay, cool. Well, good luck with that. Here's the here's the stuff you'll need to learn.
That's the key thing is, are you aware of what you're getting into? And that's where I like to give people
and all I'm saying is that when I'm not going to speculate on the future for other people. I had 40 Bitcoin. That's true. I owned 40 Bitcoin. And you know what? My speculation was wrong. And every time I look at the price of Bitcoin, it's a reminder to me that I am very bad at predicting the future. I'm very bad at it. And so I'm not going to try and predict. I'm putting away the crystal ball forever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what's it like now, what is actually happening now. And when somebody says, I don't know how to use these AR things, like they're not they weren't part of, my plumbing career up to now. I want to be able to say, wow, that's a really interesting, problem to solve. Let's see what kinds of resources there are out there on how we could learn this new system. And let's try to learn a little bit about it and see whether or not this is worth, investing our time into, or if there's something else we would rather pivot into in order to learn that skill. And that's it. I don't really, and if there are real current and present dangers that people need to be aware of course we should talk about those. But speculating on what might happen in the future based upon, looking at trends, dude, I've lost over $1 million in Bitcoin doing that. I have a very good daily reminder of which I have a little Bitcoin stock ticker or price ticker on the Stream Deck to remind me all the time of exactly how bad I am at predicting the future. So science is the best way to predict the future. If you really do want to actually, get into that work, then become a scientist. And I am not a scientist. And so I'd have to refer you to somebody else that would be able to help you out with that. I'm an engineer. And if you want to learn how to pivot your current engineering, related job into I liked what you were saying, instead of the age of technology, it's the age of automation. If you'd like to learn, a little bit more about how to adapt your skills to that, then this is the place for that. That's what I was wanting to talk about. Yeah. And I did put a second part of the vision in here. It says, educate people on the challenges of the age of automation. So if there's something that we can verify that's a real actual, a real problem, like for example with blockchain and cryptocurrency, we know that there's a problem where the network is going to continue to need more miners, and there's going to be less incentive for miners as time goes on. There's going to be less and less miners and more demand for it, and there's going to be a crossover point at some point where that network is not going to work in its current form. But for me to speculate and say that it will never adapt to something else in order to save itself, I'm not going to make that bet. And I'm definitely, excuse me, should have used the mute button on that one. But yeah. But I'll refer them to you. To have a conversation with you. Maybe we could create a second, You always did want to do the everything is burning podcast. So
yeah, I want to do the tagline. Bitcoin, where a minor problem is a major problem.
Yeah,
so many problems. Yeah, no, that's where I never put up the website, but I still might do it. But toward entropy is obviously a play on the everything tends toward entropy, and I have the domain registered, and I've thought of putting up a survey of all kinds of. It's going to have a disclaimer. First thing on the page, it's going to be like, if you're depressed, just leave now. Here's links to puppies and kittens and rainbows and shit, because it's not going to be if you want to read on a bad day.
Okay, so let's wrap up this vision here. So we want to help people adapt their skills to the age of automation and educate people on the challenges of the age of automation. There's clearly some redundancy in here, so I'm wondering how can we combine these two into a concise vision statement? So help people adapt their skills and
adapt your skills by informing them of some of the challenges and opportunities in the age of automation and augmentation.
By educating and informing? No, because that's just like, that's saying that we're going to help them by telling them. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's definitely your style. I'm going to help them by telling them everything wrong with it. but I'm not trying to make it into just that. We're really trying to help them adapt their skills to the age of automation through education and informing, or
information.
Information.
You want to do?
Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, I like it. All right.
Yeah, that's a good vision. To me, that's the most important stuff. It's kind of like if you're going to learn a foreign language, learn the profanity first. If someone's running at you yelling profanity, you probably want to know that. You probably need to act on that like right now. If someone's just saying, hi, how do you do? You can smile your way through that one. Doesn't really matter. Yeah. So it's the same thing in the job market and technology. Know when you're in big trouble. That's the most important thing.
Well, I think this is a great vision, and this does not sound to me like some of the BS visions that we were criticizing earlier. Like, I think that this sounds a little more like, it does sound a little ambitious, not overly ambitious. It sounds like something that will take some hard work to try and achieve. It also sounds like something that might, we might fail at. It's something that is going to be a legitimate challenge to be able to make, to achieve. But it does not sound like, what is it called? What did your fan say? He said, hiding your intentions 101.
Yeah. Well, that's something that actually in some of my educational advisory work that I think is really important to help undo, which is if we can help people back off on failure aversion right there. Like that's one of the worst things that school does is it gets you stuck in this mode of extreme failure aversion where you're supposed to be getting straight A's, which means you can never fail even a little bit, which means you can never try anything that's a little bit risky or innovative. And so you get these people, these graduates, and you work with them and they're terrible because they're so scared to make a mistake. And they're like, how do I do this? We talked about the Grace Hopper quote. And, well, how are you so good at computers? Letterman asks her. And she's like, I wasn't. It was the first one. And there's still plenty of work in tech where you're building these massive global systems and you're solving problems no one has solved before. And if you're trying to like Google the answer of how do I build a global database with latency that's within this, like it's not there. You have to figure it out. You're probably going to screw it up a few times, but that's the process. Right. And you need to get comfortable with like screwing it up and then learning. I'm not saying just do whatever and don't worry about it. I'm saying you're gonna fail when you try big things. How do you learn quickly? How do you like put stuff in place to mitigate the failure? It's kind of like you go rock climbing, you wear a rope, unless the crazy free climbers, right? You're probably going to miss and fall, but you wear the rope and the rope catches you so you can go rock climbing again instead of splattering on the cliff face below.
Right.
So it's really simple. There's ways to mitigate problems and there's ways to do that with your system too. You can engineer systems that have levels of safety. And when you're doing migrations and other stuff, it's really easy to have the rope so that when you inevitably screw up, it's like, oh, well, that was annoying. And I wish I got to spend my weekend doing something else, but we didn't lose anyone's data. and we had very little downtime. So, I learned some important lessons about how to move a database, but it's mostly okay. And you're not a headline. That's what I want to do. Actually, that's part of our mission statement, is prevent people from being bad news headlines. I want to keep you off the news on, oh God, they just, 2.5 billion passwords breached. Yeah, we want to make sure you never do that, right?
Wow.
We want good headlines where, oh, he invented some new thing. It's amazing. I've said that to people at conferences. So,
well, speaking of making mistakes,
I'm noticing that you're a fan.
Speaking,
yeah, we've also hedged our bets, haven't we? That you're a fan. They did say embrace failure. I guess they're just following true to the mission statement.
Well, I mean, that's the name of the company, fault tolerant. Sort of, it's built in there that we're gonna mess up. Like, for example, I think we already messed up by saying we were going to cover the vision, mission statement, and the value statement all in one episode. And we're already at almost an hour and 10 minutes. And I think we should probably wrap this up and come back to the mission statement in a second episode. Because it sounds to me like you and I can't do anything simple. Mission Impossible. There we go.
Mission Statement Impossible. Yeah.
Mission Statement. I like that. And so, yeah.
Hopefully,
I think
our next episode is not lack of value statement.
So, yeah. Let's come back to this, and I think we hashed out a lot of really important considerations for this. We took this. A lot of considerations about like our ideals and what we are, sort of we reeled it back from idealism, and we turned it into something that looks actionable. It looks like something that we can deliver on if we do it right. And it is ambitious enough and risky enough that we don't know for sure whether or not we're going to be able to do it, which, to me, makes it far more interesting, far more challenging, and it's rousing up my instinct to want to prove everyone wrong that we're gonna muck this up. And so I like where we're at. I do think that our mission statement is probably going to create a whole nother hour of conversation. And so that's why I think we ought to wrap it up here. So anything you want to leave everybody with on the topic of creating a vision for your company?
I guess the main thing is, if you're going to do this, do it like you mean it. Not like you mean it, but actually mean it. Because when you read through a lot of major corporate mission and vision statements, they're so far removed from what that company does day to day. So that's my concern, is like, just doing this smells, just reeks of corporate shame, to quote one of my favorite shows. Like if you're not going to hold to it, why bother? So I think hopefully we hold to it. I think we will. I also want to put that out there. If anyone who's watching now or years from now, if we're still up to this and we're not holding true to this, call us on it.
Yeah.
Hold us to account and be like, hey, you guys said you're going to do this and you're not. Like, what's up? So
I love the I love the challenge. I do feel, I have this gut feeling that we just asked for it, but I'm hoping we didn't
call us out on it and actually have to stay true to it and have to live what we're talking about. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, agreed.
Right? I don't want to do this to impress someone and we want people to pretend our company isn't making the world worse. Like, that's what I love. We should do a whole show sometime. I would love, oh my God, he'd be like one of my favorite guests ever if I could get, probably going to butcher his name, Anand Girardis. And he has the elite charade of changing the world. Just, phenomenal writing. And he talks about, like, one of my favorite lines from him is, all these companies ask, what can we do to make the world better? Right. And they put that in all their promotional bullshit. And he's like, what they never ask? What could we stop doing to make the world worse? And there's a lot more, good that could be done by just like your entire, just what you do as a company is destroying the world. Like, it is fundamentally toxic. Just stop. You want to make the world better? Just stop doing what you're doing. and massive positive impact overnight if you just stop. But they never ask that. It's always like, whoa, what could we throw a few bucks at this to make it look like we give a damn about people? And then they do, and then everyone forgets and problem stays.
No, you're right. And I think we should be called out. This should be, this is an oath that I think I'm taking this is a promise that I'm going to make for the remainder of what we do with Fault Tolerant, which is we're going to stick to this vision. And all of the stuff we do, everything we do, is going to go through a process of reviewing these verticals, the vision, the mission statement, and the values. And if something doesn't align with it, we're just not going to do it. And that's going to be how it is. We're going to have to be principled on that.
And speaking of getting things wrong in the failure version, I'd love to do a segment called, prove me wrong. And if anyone has actual background and like valid points, like I don't want to just be arguing and trolling, but like if anyone's like, no, that's my field and here's what you screwed up, I would love to have them on the show and be like, all right. In fact, that's one guest at some point that, I'd like to have on. I got a friend who's a PhD in mathematics, and we were actually supposed to have him on last week, and we had a little scheduling snafu. Well, see, now I'm using like everyone else. Snafu is not what we had. It was a minor mix-up. Snafu is a permanent state. Look up the acronym if you're curious.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he works on blockchain projects, and I obviously am not a fan of blockchain, but he is incredibly intelligent, and he's considered. He's not trying to do get rich quick bullshit. Like he does really good stuff, and he's involved with a major project doing cryptocurrency. And I'm like, dude, if you're into this, I feel like I missed something. Like, I'm pretty confident after how many years I've put in going to all these big conferences and talking to everyone I can find who's an expert on this, pretty confident that I'm not wrong about some of the stuff I'm saying. But the fact that you're still doing this gives me pause that maybe I missed something. So at some point we'll have him on the show, because I'm actually trying to hire him for a project for a 6-figure salary. So obviously I respect the guy. If I'm throwing that kind of money at him, I'm not going to do that with someone that, someone who doesn't know what the heck they're doing. And he has some very specialized knowledge, and he's helped me validate some ideas that are really complex. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'd love to have other people on. It's like, yeah, that thing you said, here's why that doesn't actually hold.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, I think that will do it. Time will tell whether or not we have the guts to stick to this, and whether or not we're going to follow through and achieve this particular vision. But I love it, and I'm going to commit to it now. So, everybody, thank you very much for showing up tonight. Thanks for taking part in this conversation about how Fault Tolerant is changing. And also, thank you for contributing to what is becoming what is going to be the core DNA of this company. I think this is really interesting to be able to do this with audience interaction and to do it together. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Fault Tolerant is brought to you by all of our sponsors and also by EGX.org. It is a nonprofit in Arizona that aims to address societal changes of emerging tech through thoughtful discussion, impactful initiatives, and advisory work for decision makers in education and public policy. So, thank you very much, Christina, for the copy. We're gonna have to get that a little shorter, but
just in time. I love my co-founder. She's awesome.
I love Christina. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night. Take care.